Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we have a fantastic presentation by esteemed astrologer Celeste Brooks titled Aries Ingress 2024, The Fortunes of a Nation. If you wish to view our current class, workshop and webinar offerings, please visit KeplerCollege.org. And without further ado, let's get into the video.
We are here with Celeste Brooks today for our webinar on the Aries Ingress. Let me tell you a little bit about Celeste before I turn it over to her. Celeste specializes in natal, mundane, and horary astrology. Her offerings include classes, workshops, coaching, chart rectification, and readings. Her podcast, Celestial Insights, offers weekly guidance. She discusses the astrology of current events on her popular Instagram Lives. She is the OPA Transit Talk host, and she is an OPA Live manager. She lectures for astrology organizations, schools, and conferences, including OPA, IZAR, KeplerCollege, Synchronicity University, Astro Bash, and NORWAC, which is coming up in May. Before transitioning into astrology full-time, Celeste had a successful sales and marketing career at Fortune 500 companies spanning over 25 years. She has an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley, and she has an MBA from St. Mary's College. She holds the STA's practitioner's level certification in horary. We are so happy to have you here today, and as faculty with Kepler College. You can find Celeste at astrologybyceleste.com, and I am going to stop sharing and hand it over to Celeste.
So the talk today is about the Aries Ingress, the fortunes of a nation. And what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a primer about mundane astrology, and then I'm going to jump into the USA chart, and I'm going to be giving some predictions that I think of things that are potentially coming up based on the energies. And if we have time, I'll talk about a few other countries, but we'll see how it goes. Because once I get going, I like talking. So thank you for the kind introduction. I don't need to say anything else about myself. But yeah, so the Aries Ingress. This is a chart that's cast at the moment the sun enters the sign of Aries, the spring equinox. And when you cast it at the nation's capital, it will give you insight into events that will be coming up over the next year. Yeah. So the modality of the sign on the ascendant speaks to how long the forecast is good for. For a cardinal sign, you repeat at the cardinal ingresses. Cardinal signs are movable signs. They're fast, they're pivots, they're quick. Fixed signs, it's good for the whole year, Aries Ingress to Aries Ingress, and mutable signs, 6 months. So you would cast again at the Libra Ingress. Okay. So when we're looking at an event chart or a mundane chart or an Aries Ingress chart, each of the planets is a natural representative of certain themes. And the sun is the one, it's the leaders, the sovereigns, royalty, the bosses, captains, CEOs, the one at the top. The moon represents the many, the public, juries, the electorate, things like natural resources and public attention. It's the people. Mercury is the connector. So Mercury rules transportation, commerce, as well as all news sources and media sources. It's a natural indication of children. And commerce, communication, and transportation. Those are 3 big mercurial topics. Venus, the peacemaker. So we can think about culture, fashion, marriage laws, diplomacy, finances, women. Mars is the battle. So Mars rules things like the military and police. We can think about energy, surgeons, criminals, athletes, people who compete, men in general. For Jupiter, ethics, judges, lawyers, that sort of things, professors. Also, themes of long distance travel, universities, like anything about religion, but also wealth. Jupiter rules large sums of wealth, so we can think about bankers as well. Saturn, conservation. We can think about landowners, certain resources, the elderly, Saturn, the Grim Reaper, indicated of death, also structures. Uranus, innovations, like scientists, revolutionaries, the rebels. Also sudden events that seem to happen out of nowhere. I forget who said it. Maybe Liz Green, if you can predict it. It's not Uranus. So yeah, things come out of nowhere at times. With Neptune, it's illusions, the planet of illusions and delusions. Drugs, fraudsters, cult leaders or Neptunian figures, influencers. Oceans, like large masses of water. And Pluto has mass influence, organized crime, whistleblowers, when Pluto is aspected, like things come to light. Also can think about oppressors and domination, and it's the higher octave of Mars. So there's this nature of, yeah, conflict as well, potentially. And then we look at the different houses. So when you're looking at a mundane chart, really, or any kind of event chart, the focus of your eyes should go to the angular houses. So the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, but I put all of them, all of the houses here. The first house represents the public, the citizens, the general prosperity and health of the nation at the time. If you're doing like a trial chart, it's the prosecution, or a battle chart, it's the attackers. And the 4th house, also of primary importance, is the landowners, crops, rebels, the political opposition party. So you can think about I'm jumping around here. I want to focus on the angular houses. The 10th house is the executive branch and the leader, the national reputation and influence. So the 10th, and opposite to it, the 4th, is these topics of, topics of rebels, opposition parties, as well as land and landowners. The 1st house is the people of the nation, the public. And then the 7th house is connotations around foreign affairs, as well as war and peace, our allies, as well as our open enemies. And in a trial chart, it's the defense, and in an attack chart, it's the victim of the attack. So the purposes of today, I want to focus on the houses that are important in the United States Aries Ingress, but you can take a picture if you want to go through all of them. I'll just quickly go through them all. Number 2, the 2nd house is about the finances, banks and things like that, stock exchange, money markets. The 3rd house, the mail, information systems, the press, internet, transportation, early education. The 5th house, places of leisure, recreation, diplomats, children's issues, birth rates, sexual attitudes. And the 6th house is the labor force, like public servants, trade unions, and things about the health and work. Epidemics as well fall in the 6th house. I already talked about the 7th and the 10th, but the 8th house is about debt, death rate, danger from disasters, then the resources of other countries. So if you think about the 7th house is the other, the allies or the open enemies, the 8th house is their resources. 9th, the judicial branch, religion, higher education, long distance travel stuff, or the travel industry. The 11th, the legislative branch, like Congress and things like that. Long range plans for improvement. And the 12th house, prisons, places people would rather not be. Also the welfare state, hospitals, homeless, refugees, hidden things are the 12th house. And I'll pause there. Lori, are there any questions in the Q&A?
At this moment, there are not, so you can keep on going.
Okay.
The next time you want to pause, and I'll have my eye on the Q&A box.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So first, I want to preface this about talking about giving the United States a health check. So this is the Sibley chart, the most used chart about the United States. And there's some things we need to think about the time that we're in right now. So last July 18th, the North Node went into the sign of Aries and the South Node into the sign of Libra. And the United States has Libra, here one Libra at the midheaven, representing our government, our president, the authorities up here. And the South Node is a cosmic drain. It sweeps things out. It's indication of letting things go. If if you have clients or people, especially Libra risings, like all of my Libra risings clients have had some kind of experience with some kind of feeling drained or low energy. Several got COVID for the first time since the South Node went into Libra, because that's, and you can think about the house Libra's going through in your chart and recognizing it's going through the house of the United States government right now. And October 14th of last year, excuse me, that should say 2023, apologies, there was a solar eclipse at 21 Libra in the public 10th house of the United States chart. And it's a South Node solar eclipse. So the South Node solar eclipse speaks to the nature of like some kind of drain. And it was a doozy. There was this, so Bernadette Brady has delineated all of the eclipses Saros cycles. There's these cycles that happen every 18 years and 9 to 11 days where the eclipses repeat of the same nature of the cycle. And for this one, there was this Mars-Pluto influence. And yeah, a week before this eclipse was when the war in Israel started. So you can see the sun, the eclipse opposite Chiron of the United States. Oppositions come in from other people or other events. So one of our allies was attacked and is now at war, and we all know what's going on there. But the United States response to and I'm not trying to get political, I'm just saying what's going on. The United States response has caused a lot of problems for the president. His approval ratings are low, and the government, because of funding around this, catastrophe and calamity going on. So that's an example of the South Node clearing out something about the public reputation of the country based on our response to the event that was triggered by the solar eclipse. Now, on Monday, there's going to be a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Libra, right conjunct the midheaven of the United States and squaring Jupiter, this Jupiter-Venus conjunction. And because the United States is a Sagittarius rising chart, Jupiter is our chart ruler, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And so essentially, the United States by square is being our chart ruler is being eclipsed. So there's likely some, there's going to be events going on that may have already taken place related to this eclipse that relate to the health of the country or the people of the country, as well as it could have a third house nature, because Pisces is a traditional ruler of Jupiter is a traditional ruler of Pisces, and it's being eclipsed. We see Venus, the 11th house, that's Congress, and the 6th house, that's what I said earlier, like trade unions, all sorts of things, health kind of stuff, but ill health. One of the stories we already know is that Chuck Schumer, who is the head of the Senate and a Democrat, called for Bibi Netanyahu to be replaced in Israel. And that was a big shocking thing that he said. So that might be part of the story. with the square to Venus, Jupiter, because Venus rules our allies. And yeah, with Jupiter there. And also on this day, there is the south node will be at 15 degrees of Libra. So the south node will be on the Saturn of the United States. So Saturn is a drain. The south node is a drain. It clears things out. Saturn rules our second house of finances, as well as our third house of transportation, all those kinds of things, the mail and that. And I should say, oh, it says it on the slide. I use Placidus is the house system that I use. Yeah, so there's going to be a progressed new moon. So what is going to be seated at this new moon, we shall see. I'm thinking about like the nature of Pisces, compassion, peace, this sort of thing, refugees, yeah, Libra, diplomacy, or there's themes of allies and all of this kind of stuff there may be some events that occur. And then on April 8th, there is going to be a solar eclipse at 19 Aries. And it's not just conjunct Chiron, it's conjunct Chiron to the minute and the degree. So it's very symbolic of something, which I'll share what I think is. And it's conjunct the United States Chiron in the fourth house of rebels, the opposition party, land, things like that. And then we're going to have this Mercury retrograde in Aries. One of my followers on Instagram told me that when the Titanic sunk, there was a Mercury retrograde and a solar eclipse related to it. So I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And on April 20th, that's the day of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction at 21 degrees of Taurus. And on that same day, the United States is having a Chiron return. So all of this is to say that the United States, our government, and the people are tied to the government. We are in a weakened position. We are someone who needs to, go to the doctor and get a checkup and consider, making some changes, kind of thing. If we were a person, I would say, to improve our vitality. So this is the Aries Ingress it happened already this week, set in Washington, D.C. And we see here there's a Scorpio rising here, 16 degrees Scorpio. And this is a quote about Scorpio. Bright Scorpio, armed with poisonous tail, prepares men's martial minds for violence and for wars. His venom heats and boils their blood to rage, and rapine spreads o'er the unlucky age. So Manilius said that, and last October 28th, there was a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Taurus. But a big thing about that eclipse was Mercury and Mars were conjunct in Scorpio opposite Jupiter in Taurus. And that was the day the ground war started in Israel, where they were going into these tunnels underground. And this whole, the attack and response and all of this, it brought to our conscious attention with the opposition to Jupiter about this long-standing hatred between these two peoples coming up to the surface related to religion, Jupiter, and land, Taurus. So astrology is just so literal at times. It's incredible. Okay, so we look, so this to me, Scorpio, it's an intense sign, it's a fixed sign. It's like it can be used, this chart is good for the whole year. You can think about all sorts of things, Scorpio themes. And what do people put in their chat? What are some of the things that come to your mind about Scorpio things? Yeah. there's, death, debt, but it can be deeply healing, investigative, all sorts of things. So that means that the people are represented by this Mars at 27 degrees of Aquarius, because we use traditional rulers, and Mars is the ruler of Scorpio for the Aries Ingress chart. And yeah, it's right here at the IC, which means it's angular. That means that Mars is very powerful and strong. Now it's at the end of the degree of the sign. And, what does Mars do? Mars attacks, Mars competes, Mars strives to achieve. Yeah, it's very primal. There's a lot of competition and conflict energy. And if you think about what's going on with the United States, it's in an air sign, Aquarius, which is about thoughts, and people are really entrenched in their opinions. One of the big things that's going on, there's all this, strife between people of opposing political views and different views about all sorts of things. Now, so this to me says, yeah, there's potential for, attacks happening, as well as, because the natal moon of the United States in the Sibley chart is at 27 Aquarius. Mars is on the moon, so that gives themes of land and resources, as well as the people, as well as, the mentality. I liken it to a hot air balloon. Like, people, there's these boiling tensions around people. There's a Scorpio nature and the Aquarius nature. There's like this deep-seated feelings, as well as almost a sense of detachment with the Aquarius energy. So some of the themes I've been thinking about with this chart, because you can see here the sun, which rules the 10th house, and the 10th house is the leader, is in the 5th house. So why is the sun, the leader, the president, in the 5th house of this chart? Something that has come to me is that there may be some crisis, and this could be sometime next week or this weekend, around an embassy with the lunar eclipse in Libra, because Libra rules diplomacy, squaring Jupiter overseas. I mean, that could be something that comes up, or it could be about an ambassador, but something about embassies is quite possible, I think, coming up. We know that there's been a lot of protests and things on college campuses. The moon is also a co-signifier of the people. It always is in horary charts or Aries Ingress charts. And we can see the moon is here in Leo in the 9th house. So that to me suggests that the people are thinking about 9th house topics, as well as the moon is in a fixed sign. So it's like they're not changing their opinions. And you can see here, the moon is separating from an opposition to Pluto. Separating aspects are things that have happened in the past. And we can think about, to me, like 2 years ago, that's when Roe versus Wade was overturned. And this, again, like brings up this scorpionic theme about what people are experiencing in terms of, there's all this control that is being exerted over people, especially in places like Texas and whatnot, where they're trying to limit like women leaving the state if they're pregnant, to have any kind of abortion or anything like that. So that brings this theme up again in this packed 5th house. And with the moon in the 9th house of legal affairs, all these laws coming up, and Mercury Chiron. Mercury is symbolic of children, and in Aries Chiron, like women making their own decisions about what they're going to do with their children when they're pregnant, is themes of this 5th house, as well as this diplomacy stuff with the embassy is what I'm wondering if there'll be more stories. Well, we know there'll be more stories about women's fertility rights because that's a huge topic for this year. Yes. And Texas, I mean, the path of totality for this eclipse is going through Canada, the US, and parts of Mexico. So we're right in the thick of it. And I think a lot of the action may happen in Texas. And I'm specifically wondering if at the Texas border, there's going to be some conflagration while Mercury is retrograde and maybe at the solar eclipse where there's a conflict between the border control and the and people trying to come to the United States for asylum and whatnot. There was already something this week where things got a little out of control and people tried to rush into the United States. And I think that'll be amplified because this solar eclipse at 19 Aries, the Saros series 8N, has like flashes of genius, inspiration. This is a beautiful, like there's a lot of beautiful energy out there with this solar eclipse. But we know we're going to see events in the news of an Aries nature, and Aries rules conflict and violence and things like that. It just is what it is, competition, all of these kinds of things. But there's this like deep desire for freedom as part of this, a part of the delineation for this Saros cycle of this Aries eclipse. And yeah, so great time for the personal level and for people to be writing down great ideas and all sorts of stuff like that. This is supposed to be like the L train, but I think there's going to be action that takes place on some kind of public transit. Pluto here in the third house, and the sun is applying to a sextile to Pluto. And yeah, so one of the things that has been happened recently is that the state of New York has deployed the National Guard into the subways in order to keep order because crime there has gotten so out of control. And I'm wondering if when Mercury's retrograde, there'll be some kind of, Mercury retrograde in Aries, fighting words, people short-tempered, somebody acting impulsive, jumps the turnstile or does whatever, mouths off, and then there's some kind of conflict that makes big news. Also with Mars here in the fourth house, it could be rebels or like enemies. There could be some kind of, some kind of attack on Aquarius rules things like aviation, the air, things like that. There's also, with Venus conjunct Saturn, I noticed there was news about water desalination. That was one of my predictions from last year, is that there would be some scientific advancement about water desalination with all of the Pisces energy at these eclipses. And Uranus rules like scientific discoveries. So this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, part of it may be, these discoveries that help the Earth be better preserved and whatnot. I'll just pause there for a second. Lori, are there any questions?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. The first one is about the Sibley chart that you're looking at. Roberta would like to know if you know what house of the Sibley chart, of the US chart, Israel's sun is in. Have you looked at Israel's chart in the US?
Yes. Israel's chart, their sun is at 23 degrees of Taurus. And yeah, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is within 2 degrees of their sun. So they fall right on our 6th house. Yeah. And you can think about there are 21-degree Libra rising. So there's something about them where our fortunes rise and fall together in some ways. And you could even call it sixth house rules, things like burdens. Like right now, this is kind of dragging Biden down. This is what's going on over there. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And then another question from Trudy about the U.S. as the financial situation. So she says, no doubt the U.S. is in a weakened financial position. Do you have anything, or could you decipher anything about the $34 million U.S. debt that we are experiencing, or that the U.S. is experiencing based on the Ingress chart?
So I think it's in terms of the debt, well, with the Ingress chart, we've got Sagittarius on the second house and Mercury on the eighth house. So debt is like eighth house, but finances, the second house. To me, this Jupiter-Uranus, there could be something that happens that impacts the wealth of the nation that we're not aware of what it is that comes in. So it could be a problem with all of this debt. And you can think about Mercury, Uranus, this debt burden that we're putting on fifth house children of the nation. I mean, it's awful how big our debt has spiraled. But yeah, Jupiter is going to go into Gemini and then square Saturn. I think August 18th or 19th for the first time. That, and then late after the day after Christmas, I think that can be traditionally, because Jupiter rules wealth and Saturn rules constriction, and that square, that can also be a time where there can be like some kind of a problem around wealth.
Yeah.
Or of the nation.
Thank you. And correction, I said million. I meant to say trillion, so I apologize for that.
No worries. It's too big to even contemplate how big our debt is.
Yeah. How many times a year do you say trillion?
Yeah. And
Okay.
that's a great comment, because with the South Node going through our 10th house, there is this sense of this weakened position. And when Jupiter, our chart ruler, goes into Gemini, it's in the sign of its detriment. So yeah, there's a lot going on for the country this year. Now, one story that's going to be interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another question?
There is one more, if you want to take it now, or if
yes,
you think
yeah, let's take it down.
I'll tell you what it is. It's from Christina, who says, how do you see AI and rampant disinformation and fake news coming up through this chart?
Pluto in Aquarius in the third house. That can be something like, and I have this little picture here with the phone and the credit card, but it's also like, that's AI. Pluto in Aquarius plus Saturn and Pisces together, I feel like you don't know if what you are seeing is reality, because Saturn reality and Pisces illusion. I mean, and Pluto and Aquarius using this technology, like one of the latest things is they're calling people, and it sounds like your loved one in distress asking you to send money. That's one of the things that we're going to be seeing more and more of, this kind of really intense deception using technology. And the Sun sextile Pluto, this gives me the thought of, this being involved with the elections, in terms of, because the Sun rules leaders, and sextile Pluto, the transformation potential of a leader with the elections. Yeah, and all sorts of, you're going to see different people saying things they never said, or it's going to be wild.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all the questions for now.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's going to be interesting as well is these cicadas or crickets. There's something about, my friend Tiffany brought to my attention, Tiffany Herlick, that they hatch every 17 years or something, and there's this like really big amount of cicadas going to hatch this year. And I'm wondering if, because they make this noise, and I don't know if it's like at Jupiter Uranus, because it could be the It could be then, or when Jupiter enters Gemini, if there's going to be a big story about how much the noise from these insects is disturbing people. And Jupiter enters Gemini on May 25th. And you can think about like insects, like giving people headaches with this Mercury Chiron, but almost making people feel attacked. Mars and Aquarius, these things flying in the air, making all this noise that's driving people somewhat nutty with it. This Pandora's box imagery in terms of, I feel like Venus, Saturn, this is something like you giving a gift, but it's like, don't drink the poison is what I get with Venus conjunct Saturn. Like something's coming that's positioned like a gift, but it's not. And it could be, it's in Pisces, so it could be like some kind of deceptive cyber thing is what I'm thinking, like this Venus Saturn, because Venus rules the 12th house of hidden things in this chart. Now that's also within a degree or two of Israel's rising sign. Israel's rising sign is, I believe, 23 Libra. So maybe this is about Venus. This relationship is under pressure, Saturn, and it may come to a head even more than Chuck Schumer just saying that, you know, change needs to happen in terms of, and, you know, the calls for a ceasefire. That's a possibility. Yeah, also some kind of water issue. I had done a post about, so I got this gift, and it on the day after I opened it, after that Venus Saturn perfected, and as Venus separates from Saturn, it moves towards Jupiter. So I got this oracle deck from a publishing house they sent me, and I opened it, and it smelled so much like chemicals. It was just horrible. Yeah, because it was carrying that Saturnian bad smell from the chemicals they use, but it was this beautiful, gorgeous deck, Jupiter, this Venus Jupiter, but it was carrying that old past. So I had to let it air out overnight. So that's kind of, think about if you've noticed something in the last day or so, like an old love came up to your attention or something Saturnian, Venus Saturnian, and now you're moving towards Jupiter or something better. Yeah, that's a tangent. Okay. The Trojan horse, that's also Venus Saturn. Like my biggest concern this year is that some kind of cyber thing happens where at the Aries solar eclipse, or it could happen, it doesn't have to be on the day, but that Chiron conjunction, let me go back to this chart. The solar eclipse at 19 degrees of Aries conjunct Chiron, when Chiron is Cazimi, it's like hidden under the sun. There's this invisibility about the wounded healer, and Chiron is a centaur, so like a horse, and he was a doctor. So yeah, there's themes. I think maybe like something implanted somewhere technologically that does not come to our conscious awareness until closer to the election, and then it's unleashed and it causes pandemonium where people can't vote, or like, yeah, stuff goes on at the polls. That's kind of one of my concerns of a potential with us being in a weakened state, like that Chiron in the house of the rebels hidden, that there could be some kind of, yeah, that thing. Now that also could just be about how the United States Congress is taking action around TikTok, because they feel like TikTok could be used to weaponize, the masses of the United States. Like they have people, all these kids talking about Osama bin Laden's bright ideas. So yeah, this is like one of the concerns around TikTok because of the Chinese government influence. Okay. Another big thing that has been in the news is about the Houthi rebels attacking ships in the sea over there. I think it's the Red Sea, and Mars is conjunct Saturn at the solar eclipse. So Jupiter, Jupiter rules things like your ship, your best ship in your fleet, whatever that's called. And Uranus, like something big happening, but Mars, Saturn, and Pisces on the waters, potentially, over there could be something that comes up. They have threatened these Houthi rebels from Yemen to cut some kind of cable that connects Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and all of this information about financial transactions goes through there. So that could be like a Jupiter-Uranus type event where financial transactions, boop, sudden attack, they go down for an indefinite, period of time, or there's some kind of lights out energy with that, but hopefully not. I mean, the government's well aware of what's going on over there, and they've discovered some like attempts to cut it, but we're able to stop it. Let's see. Yeah. College campuses, I think they're made with this moon in the 9th house, like events on college campuses that get a lot of attention, especially during Mercury retrograde where tempers are flaring. And I think I went through all of those. Okay. So you can see the Leo moon is in the same sign, but separating from the sun. And that to me speaks to the people, because the moon is symbolic of the people as well. Separating from the president, like his approval ratings going down, but a lot of them have nowhere to go. You can see the next aspect it makes is a square to Jupiter. There's no talking to Saturn, the opposing party. So yeah, so it's interesting. Like there was this big thing where people, I think none of the above, or not no comment in Michigan, where people went to the polls and did not vote for Biden, but they were like making some kind of statement. And I feel like that's that separation from the president, because of what's going on with the war and all of that. Yeah, but the abortion issue is going to be a big driver, driving people to the polls. And I feel like with this Scorpio rising, themes of control over women and their fertility, as well as the people represented by this Mars in Aquarius, like attack Mars on freedoms, Aquarius, of the people. This is the same degree of the moon in the natal chart. That's very animating to a lot of people on one side or the other. And yeah, and it's interesting, this 3 degrees Leo is Ukraine's Chiron is at 3 Leo, and Israel's moon is at 4 Leo. So that brings in themes of their charts into this. And Jupiter, Uranus, like, is the wealth we're sending to these places going to be limited? Like President Biden's having a difficult time getting anything to Ukraine because the opposition party does not want to fund that war anymore. And yeah, and Israel, there's been some like talk about increasing the pressure, and it may come with like some kind of financial thing. Let's see, what else did I want to say about that? Yeah, Ukraine is something I'm concerned about, this eclipse season being like a reversal of fortune, and then like Russia making great advances against them. That could be something that comes up with this eclipse. Okay, so because Mars is representative of the people for this whole year of the United States, because of the Aries Ingress, and Jupiter, the United States, as a Sagittarius rising, Jupiter represents, yeah, us as well. I looked at Mars and Jupiter transits. I think, like, really pay attention to Mars transits this year and what is happening when Mars is making aspects, because I think events will be related to Mars. So May 25th, Jupiter enters Gemini, the sign of his detriment, where it is weakened, where it can act in extreme and ineffective ways. And this as well is part of, I think it was Trudy who commented earlier about, oh no, it wasn't Trudy. It doesn't matter. Christine maybe, about the AI and all of this kind of stuff with the election coming and all of that and the deception. Jupiter and Gemini is just like flinging out all of this information at such a pace that we can't even keep up with it, is what I'm seeing with Jupiter and Gemini. Just more and more and more like facts or things to, and I think there's this like deception energy especially when it squares Saturn and Pisces. Yeah, so July 15th, this is one of the things I'm really thinking about, what is going to happen around here. So Mars will be conjunct Uranus at 26 Taurus, which is the degree of the fixed star Algol. It's one of the most feared fixed stars in terms of mundane events. The Chinese called it piles of corpses. It's associated with the Medusa mythology about, this beautiful woman who was attacked in Athena's temple by Poseidon and was punished and turned into a monster and then used as a weapon, but also for protection, energy. So there's this themes of the neck or beheading kind of energy with Algol. So Mars conjunct Uranus on Algol. I'm sure there'll be events in Israel around that time because that's really close to their sun. But I feel like whatever was planted around the Chiron Cazimi, if it's not discovered by this, because when an inner planet connects with an outer planet, it brings things to our conscious attention. So if this weapon Mars is identified by the time Mars meets Uranus, we're awakened to, Uranus awakens us to this weapon that was designed to Algol, like behead the United States during eclipse season. I mean, during the elections, then we may be okay. Now Mars will be conjunct Jupiter at 16 Gemini and then square Saturn at 17 Pisces. So this is a time where there could be a lot going on. Yeah, where people could be, more likely to be in conflict of each other, or there could be some kind of, attack. The other thing I wanted to say I had another thing. This Mars Uranus could just be, there's going to be the Republican convention. It's happening at that time. And it'll be really interesting to listen to the speeches there, if you listen to that sort of thing, and the nature of this Mars, Uranus, and Algol. I think we'll be seeing it all over different people's speeches. October 9th, Jupiter stations retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. And 21 degrees of Gemini is on the Mars of the United States. So this is a big deal. That makes 21 degrees of Gemini a hot degree. Mercury is going to go retrograde at 22 Sagittarius. So there's something about this oppositional energy with these hot degrees of 21 Gemini. So if you have anything at 21 of a mutable sign in your chart, there's a story for you. And it could be a story of success and growth with Jupiter stationing there. So that's something to be aware of. But there may be a little twist in terms. So Jupiter makes everything bigger. Jupiter could be like an end to conflict. Jupiter, Mars, that would be a lovely thing. Like finding some kind of being able to unite. But this is October 9th. You know, people are going to be, yeah, people are going to be acting pretty something around this time. Now, November 3rd, this is when, like, this is like the thing I'm worried about. Like, if something is seated at Chiron Cazimi, we don't catch it by the time that Mars is conjunct Uranus, that when Mars is at the 29th degree of Cancer, that's the last anaretic degree of the sign, Mars attacks. The United States Sun is a Cancer, we're a Cancer Sun, and this is in our 8th house, opposite Pluto in Capricorn. That will be when it comes to our conscious attention that this weapon or whatever is causing problems at the poles. And then there's going to be just, you know, just a lot of, yeah, will the election be delayed or something like that? I don't know. Maybe nothing will happen at all. Maybe this will just be people at the polls yelling at each other. That could be something that comes up because election day is November 5th. But Mars opposite Pluto, that's intense energy. I mean, the war in Israel started, the terrorist attack was Mars square Pluto. That, you know, that's that intensity energy. Yeah. And then on December 6th, Mars stations retrograde at 6 Leo, and that's on the south node of the United States. I mean, excuse me, the north node of the United States, in the 8th house. The north node is an amplifier. A retrograde planet has the ability to do a lot of damage, and Mars attacks. So I don't know what's going on around then, but there probably will be events related to that Mars station. Now, it may just be about a Leo type person who's got a lot of attention, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, get everything done that's really important before the elections is what I'm thinking. Like if you have, especially before this, before December, don't leave things to the last minute in December. Mars retrograde, like energy forward will be lacking. Yeah, I wouldn't launch your biggest, you know, the biggest thing you've ever launched in your business in December while Mars is retrograde. I just wouldn't do it. Now, also Mercury is going to be retrograde in Sagittarius now. And this is supposed to be Mars. Okay. Let me stop there. Are there any questions?
Yes. Yes, there are. Okay, so
am I being too controversial, Lori?
I don't think so. I think everyone is having a really good conversation in the chat box. And, you know, it's sometimes hard to talk about these politically charged topics, but it seems like you are handling this gracefully with diplomacy, the Libran style.
Well, I've got Uranus at 5 degrees of Libra at my IC. So I'm telling the astrology I see, but I'm trying to, you know, like make it very balanced. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is, how can the audience, our listeners, go about taking these ingress charts and then applying it to your natal chart? Do you have a kind of a system or process for how you do that?
For an ingress chart to your, well, you can take an ingress chart and put it where you're living now, and that can speak about what's going on in the area of where you live. You could put it around your natal chart.
Yeah,
But I
and
haven't really thought. What do you think, Lori? I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, the Caldwin is asking about using the Aries Ingress chart to understand the call to action of the theme that will play out in your own chart.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably how I would do it too. I would put it around, and you can do it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a solar return chart. You look at
Yeah.
the houses around the ingress chart, and then you can flip it and put the ingress chart around your personal.
Yeah, think about where I would think about like what is the planet that's ruling where you live, the country you live in, the ascendant, and look to that planet and see what it's doing to your chart. Could be something. For Americans, we would look at and Mars and Aquarius. What's that doing? And the themes can be around your call to action. Speaking your truth, that could be what you do about astrology.
Yeah, good point. It just made me think that some cities, you can get the chart for that city, like if
Yes.
it's a bigger city. So that would be an interesting way to look at it as well, is look at it for your location, or look at astrocartography lines. I think that there's so many different ways to answer that question. We could do a whole webinar just on that.
Yeah, I don't typically look at the Aries ingress in my own chart, but I think that's a great question about a call to action. I did look at New York City's chart, and that's where I'm a little concerned about like the the subway stuff, where people getting into conflicts with the National Guard, or whatever else could be happening. But yeah, I think, but I think with the Mars is at 27, so it's almost at the end of the sign. It's not new energy. It's like, it feels like there's a conflict, but then it ends. But there's something, and then it ends. It doesn't feel like it's like well, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is, if you have looked at the US chart with the ingress and then in comparison with the UK chart, have you done any work on that?
Well, yeah, I did look at the UK chart, and I have it here. So this is the Aries ingress, and it's uncanny that the midheaven is the same degree, this 16 degrees of Scorpio. And you can think about what's going on with England. Both Prince Charles, well, he's now King Charles, and Princess Kate are dealing with cancer. Life and death situations with this Scorpio energy. Yeah, so I looked at that, and you can see Venus conjunct Saturn. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, and it's lifted up, and that's like a princess. Venus Pisces. She announced the day that Venus met Saturn, she announced about her chronic illness. She made a video, Pisces, about her chronic illness when Venus met Saturn. So you can see that, and that was like the day after the Aries ingress. So like literally the timing on that. And the sun is exalted, and the sun, well, it's always exalted in Aries, so that doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, you can think about the king, the leader, is also dealing with this life and death issue, sextile to Pluto.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then
And you can see, look at the Jupiter Uranus at the bottom. Jupiter rules royalty, Uranus, shocking things, sudden events, all of those kind of things, disruption. It's interesting, the moon. Yeah, the moon's separating. There's like themes about the people feeling lied to or deceived by the crown. That's a big story going on there too. I wonder why it's in the 7th house though. The moon in the 7th is something. Oh yeah, yeah. We'll see. I haven't had enough time to dig as deep into this chart. But I'd love if people want to make comments about anything they see in this chart.
Yeah, we have a really active chat going on here, so I'm sure that they'll continue discussing.
Oh,
There-
Trudy said something about squatters' rights in the US. Yes, that is a big topic that feels like the land. Okay. So, fourth house, squatters' rights. They're a big story. This poor woman in New York City or New York somewhere, some people just moved into her home and won't come out. And she went in there and changed the locks, and then she got arrested. And this week there was something about a guy from Guatemala who's a big TikTok star is telling people that they can just break into people's houses that are vacant and just stay there. So this, I think, there could be some kind of conflict around that as well related to this time. It feels like Mars, I don't know, Mars and Aquarius. I break into your house in the fourth house, break into your house and just sit down and say, no, it's mine now. Venus, Saturn. I don't know. That's what I'm getting with this. Yeah. So we'll see that.
All right. There's another question. There's actually two more questions. Well, since we just talked about England, I don't know if you want to maybe take this one first. Raina would like to know if you have anything to say about intercepted signs in the England chart.
Oh, this is very interesting that Leo and Aquarius are intercepted because Leo, thoughts of royalty, the king, the crown, and Aquarius makes you feel like the collective, the common people. And yeah, that interception to me speaks to that as well. With Cancer here, the Cancer Capricorn, Cancer is like, feels like, the family is your family and authority. Capricorn, there's these, I think that comes in that themes of we've been deceived by our leaders kind of thing. But also sadness about, the fact that they're ill and people, praying for them, hoping that they'll get better.
Okay. And then there's one more question. This goes back to the US chart. And it's from Christine, who wants to know your thoughts about the possibility of a third-party candidate actually winning the election this year, like RFK Jr.
I think there's a slim to none chance that a third party would win, but you know what? Expect the unexpected with Jupiter Uranus. Yeah, and Jupiter going into detriment. If you look at if you look at next year's ingress chart, and we can do that really quickly. 2025. I haven't had time to really study it yet. Pluto on the ascendant of the United States. The midheaven. So the people are Saturn and Pisces on the cusp of the second house. So this looks like financial constriction. The moon in Sagittarius in the 10th. So they're thinking about the government, 10th house topics, leaders. 28 degrees of Scorpio feels like, and the Mars in detriment in the 6th house, it feels like an old sick leader to me is what I come up with. Just because 6th house of things that go wrong with your health or fighting unions, or and that 28 degree, like it's coming to an end. We'll
It's
see.
funny because there's two other questions. One is Biden's popularity going to rise, and is Trump's going to fall? But either could probably fall into sick old leader.
Either of them could be, yeah, either of them. Now Biden is a Scorpio, so there are themes of that with his son, but Trump is a Leo, 29-degree Leo rising. So there's themes of you can see either of them potentially in this chart, but Pluto on the ascendant is a little, oh, well, it's not quite there. The 5-degree rule. Okay, we'll give Pluto to the 12th house, which I like. Oh, but maybe not. We'll see. Yeah.
Okay. I think that they do want to hear more about Biden, and just so you can finish your presentation, I think
Yeah.
maybe we can take more questions in a little while, or do you want to keep going?
Oh, yeah, let me, I was almost done. Let's see. Let's see.
Okay, then I'm going to let you finish, and then we'll come back to questions after
Okay.
you've gone through your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. And then I just wanted to let people know I'm having an Aries eclipse event. You can go to my website, astrologybyceleste.com, if you want to sign up for that. I'll talk about it. And then I do hot take readings. And then let people know you can find my podcast anywhere, Celestial Insights, and I'm on all the socials. I'm new to Threads, and I've been starting to, and I'm kind of like just testing it out, and made some mistakes and of course correcting, and yeah, but I'm putting some predictions on there. Yes, I am. And I do Instagram lives and all this other stuff. And I also wanted to just quickly, since I've got it open. Ingress. I wanted to look at Israel and Russia, because Russia had this attack on, let's see if we see it. Last night, I think it was, there was an attack in Russia. Look at this, Venus, Saturn. It was people at a music house, and there was a terrorist attack, and over 100 people were killed. Jupiter ruling in the second house. Interesting. Yeah, very sad what went on there, but you can see it right there. Oh, and the moon's in the 6th house. Okay. People can put any thoughts about that. I also wanted to look at Israel. Why didn't I? Yeah, Israel with the 5-degree rule, that Venus Saturn is also right on there, the cusp of their first house. So we'll see what happens. And Mars and Aquarius. It's interesting. The Mars rules their income source. Venus Saturn to me is also, Venus Saturn and Jupiter Uranus could be having a financial crunch, as well as, you know, their popularity, their reputation. That South Node going through Libra as a Libra rising, their reputation around the world has been damaged by the ongoing conflict. Okay. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize you were right there at the end. All right, couple more questions. Is the U.S. reputation coming to an end? And what is the midheaven representing? And that's coming from Denise. Thanks, Denise.
Well, the South Node is a cosmic drain, so the reputation is being damaged. But just like a person, you know, there's rising and falling, rising and falling. So and people have a short attention span with, you know, everything that's going on. So we'll see. I mean, if they ban TikTok, which I think they might do when Pluto goes retrograde, you know, the kids are going to be absolutely furious. As well as we'll see what goes on with this. But I think Biden has been put on notice that a lot of people in his party are angry about the financial support for that. The border crisis is coming to a head. I think there'll be an event that brings it more into people's attention. Yeah, but do I think the US is over? No. No. But is our reputation damaged? Yes. And it's been damaged before and recovered, and yeah.
Yeah. So there's two questions about Biden. So I'm wondering if you want to look back at the Ingress chart and maybe Biden's chart if you happen to have it.
Oh, yeah, I have it.
The first question is, can you expound more on Biden and the election? And then both of these are from Louise, who's curious to see where you see the presidential election heading and if you see Biden's popularity rising soon.
Yeah, his popularity rising soon. So, well, Uranus is coming. It's not gonna oppose his Venus, and I think a popularity is Venus before the election. So I don't think it's gonna be totally cut off. And yeah, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is opposite his Mercury, which rules his midheaven and his open enemy. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I want to see what happens through eclipse season before I am sure about like what I think is going on the election.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna hold my thoughts on that. Besides the fact that I'm concerned there could be some kind of cyber thing that causes a lot of chaos around that time.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of you out in the audience are really interested in election astrology. And I just want to give you a kind of like a early advance notice that Lee Lehman is putting together a mundane astrology class specifically focused on reading election charts. So not electional astrology, but actual elections where you vote. So keep your eyes out if you want to learn more about how to do that. That course will be this summer. Okay. What about Kamala or Kamala? Excuse me.
So she is. Let's look at her.
Yeah. If you have any questions for Celeste, please put them in the Q&A box so we see them.
Let's look at her with this next year chart. See, do we see anything? Well, her moon is at 27 Aries and the Mars is at 27 Aquarius. So that's interest. That just comes to me as interesting. Ah, look at this, Jupiter Uranus. Uranus is on her Jupiter. That could be unexpectedly having to get a promotion. Possibly. We'll see. Let's look at all this Virgo. Saturn is opposing all of her stuff right now, which makes sense. Let me see. Yeah, and she's got Jupiter coming to her ascendant. As soon as Jupiter goes into Gemini, it's in the sign of her ascendant, which tends to be you get blessings, you get more. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with her. Saturn's moving through her 10th house, coming to her. It's Mars and Saturn are meeting on her Chiron. We'll see what happens with that. Last year I'd written down, is Mercury retrograde Biden going to replace her as a running mate? But I don't think so. Because Mercury's going to station at 27 degrees on her moon, which rules her second house of resources and values and all of that stuff in the 11th house. It'll be interesting to see if there's a Mercury retrograde story that's public about Kamala Harris. With its like she may say something, a flub that gets a lot of people angry at her.
Good question, Denise. How do you see the vice president in a chart? And specifically, how do you find that in the Aries Ingress chart?
That's a really good question. I typically look at the leadership as the 10th house. But if you had to separate the president and his employees are 6th house topics. So you might use the 6th house. Do you have any thoughts, Lori?
No, I don't want to guess incorrectly, and I would be
Yeah,
guessing.
that's the only thing I've in the past, I've just used the 10th house as the leadership.
Yeah.
But if we
Mary, I know you're in Lee's courses sometimes. Do you know a rulership on that?
You might try derivative houses, like try the 6 from the 10th.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, then that would be the 3rd house. Because the 6th house is employees. Yeah. 3rd house, let's look at.
But she has such an elevated standing as a vice president. I don't know if I would just look at it as a team and they both fall in the 10th house.
That's what I've done, yeah. But that's a great question.
Yeah.
Wait, where's 2024? Oh,
Wish we had Lee Lehman in the audience right now.
I know. I'm gonna shoot Lee a question. Yeah,
Yeah.
ask her what she thinks.
We'll try to get the answer to that.
Mm.
Yeah, someone in the chat is saying the 7th house, like derives 7th house from the 10th, seeing it as more of a partnership. I can see that, but there's definitely a hierarchy between the president and the vice president. So I don't know if it would be a straight across contractual relationship.
Yeah, because then that would have the vice president and the opposition party being the same. If you look at the
Exactly
7th from the 10th, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't think 7th would be accurate.
So yeah, if we look at 3rd house here for this year, that would make her Saturn. That's the 6th from the 10th. Venus, Saturn. Yeah, I don't have an answer. But I will ask Lee.
Great. Okay, we'll go on to another question. With Chiron starring in the solar eclipse, what deep issues could be coming up to be noticed and healed in the United States?
Well, one thing I was thinking, if there's some event that brings the people back together, helping us to think, remember, we're all in this together. There's been this talk about having a civil war and all this kind of stuff that makes no sense. We're all Americans. But like when 9/11 happened, we were all Americans. I mean, there wasn't this, so something could happen that heals these deep rifts between people. That would be lovely if we got back to feeling like that.
Yeah. Let's see. Jupiter to ascendant also gaining weight.
Yes. To the sun too. Like, oh, I've got Jupiter. Well, it's separating now off my sun, but it's like, I've been wanting to overindulge.
Yeah. All right. There's a couple of questions going back to Russia in the Aries Ingress slide. I don't know if you want to open or share again and pull up the ingress. Diane would like to see it again. And then there was a question. I'm just going to read it. I don't want to get to conspiracy theory, but does Russia's chart indicate whether this attack was from internal or external source?
The Russia chart? Okay.
The question is, did they do it, from inside to create something like
I can't see. Well, the Mercury Chiron, it's all in the 1st house. No, I don't know how I would look. I would want to look at the event chart rather than the ingress chart to see like who was the attacker. If the same planet rules the ascendant and the 10th house, then maybe. But yeah, I don't know enough about Russian politics to have an opinion on it. I would certainly hope not.
Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions on Russia? Okay. Is it that the media that broadcasts minority polls that alarm the masses who are not thinking about November elections yet? Okay, I'm not sure that I understand this question, Pearl.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. Can you read it again?
Yeah, is it that the media that broadcasts minority polls that alarm the masses who are not thinking about November elections yet? I don't know if you can answer that question. Then can you comment to when the mass of people will pay more attention before that important Tuesday?
Well, people start, I think, well, there's always that October surprise. So people start paying more attention September, October, and November. I think that's when you go back to school, and then the ad spends get a lot higher, and the conventions have happened. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap up.
And people can early vote in October, so people will be thinking about it then.
Right.
And that's when the stuff may, hit the fan. October 9th is when Jupiter stations retrograde. And I think like there's something about the mail is also a possibility that, there could be some stuff going on with the mail, or just talk about the mail. It's gonna be pretty wild, because a lot of people with this Scorpio rising here, are feeling like this election, regardless of their politics, is like life or death. This could be the end of democracy. Like, this is the kind of stuff that's being spoken in the collective. And it feels so Scorpio rising, Mars in 27 Aquarius, Moon in Leo, dramatic.
There's a question here if there's indications with Mars retrograde that there could be an earthquake. They're specifically asking about the West Coast.
Well, I'm a little concerned about Jupiter Uranus with that too. Mars retrograde in Leo, an earthquake on our North Node. I don't know.
And then is there anything in the Ingress chart that you could speak to the housing market?
The housing market. So the housing stuff is I believe it's the 4th house. Is that housing markets? Let me double check. Well, it's landowners. I believe the housing market is the 4th house, but I don't want to say absolutely for certain. Which, it's been tough in the US because of rising interest rates. And Mars there, that's interesting. But I don't want to say for certain that the housing market is the 4th house. But it seems to me it's land.
Okay. Do you want to have any final comments or summary before we wrap up today?
Just thank everyone for coming, and the great questions, and the great comments, and yeah. Oh, there is a big thing. There was some big thing this week I heard about. Like, there's a big real estate company. I think someone's putting it in the chat. Like that had all this control over the MLS and all of this kind of stuff, and that's changing. So that could be Venus, Saturn, like feels like the people will be able to do better negotiating the amount that they pay the realtors for.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. That was a great question about the housing stuff. Yeah.
Okay, tell us where everyone can find you. I know earlier you mentioned some of your events coming up. So where do people find you?
So Astrology by Celeste everywhere on all the socials. My website is astrologybyceleste.com. My podcast is the Celestial Insights Podcast to help you navigate the energies of the week like a boss. I offer readings, coaching, and all sorts of stuff, mentoring, and monthly moon workshops and classes. And join me in transits if you are so interested.
Yes. Yeah, and I do think that course is going to fill up. So if you really want to take that course, I would sign up soon before we have to close it because it does have a cap. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We love to do these webinars for you. We'll have another one next week, and we have a full schedule in April. I believe we have one every Saturday in April. So we hope that you will come back and join us. And if you want to see what they are, check our website. We'll see you next time. And this replay will be on YouTube probably by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Mary.
everyone.
Thank you, Celeste.
Thank you so much, Lori and Mary. I so appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love a copy of the chat if you can send it to me, because I didn't get to read all that.
Sure.
Yeah,
I can do that.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.